Welcome back, everyone. And it is now time to do my favorite thing that we do on the podcast, which is answer listener submitted questions. So if you do have questions for us, do not hesitate to send them in to us. You can submit them right through our website. You can email them to us at gettingin.voiceamerica@gmail.com, or you can also comment or DM us on any of the social media you've got out there. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, all the places. So just reach out to us wherever you are. We are probably there. Just ask us a question and we'll get to it in an upcoming segment. And joining me today for the first time, I'm very excited about my colleague, Nial Rele. Welcome, Nial.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, you are so welcome. And I should say Nial has a ton of experience in college admissions. He worked at Middlebury and Colorado College and Lewis and Clark, really experience from coast to coast, Nial. So I think you're a good one to answer listener questions. You have been there. Wherever they're thinking about applying, Nial has been there. And I should also probably say that we did an all college finance listener question segment last week. So I think we're going to focus probably entirely on admissions questions today. So let us dig right in so we can get to as many of them as possible. And the first question comes, I have been listening to your Apple podcast and it is really helpful. Give us a review. I got to put that plug in. I'm a rising senior applying to pre-dental programs, and my daughter took the ACT twice in the summer and got a 33 twice. Super scored, it would be 34. So first of all, fantastic scores out there. The question though is, she did not take the writing section either time. And she wants her to take the ACT again in September so she can take that writing section. But what do you say, Nial?
That's absolutely right. So in the last few admission cycles, particularly since the SAT discontinued their essay section, almost no colleges in the country are requiring the ACT writing section, right? None of the IVs, for instance, are requiring or even recommending that students submit the writing section. So simple answer, don't worry about it. You have a great score. And if colleges are keen to understand how strong your writing is, there's a ton of writing in the applications, right? Your common application essay and all of that. And that absolutely will suffice. So do not worry about the writing section of the ACT in this particular situation. Don't worry about it.
Perfect. I love it when there's an easy answer. So often our answers are, it depends, but it really doesn't depend. They're fine. All right. The next question came in from Mona through our website. And Mona asks, how are the following activities viewed by college admissions officers? Number one, starting a new charity in high school and hosting fundraising events and active charity events while in high school, parentheses, and then the new charity is abandoned once in college. I think we know how Mona feels about this. So starting your own charity, compared to volunteering in charities that are already in existence in a hands-on approach. So maybe not in a leadership position, but volunteering those sweat hours for an existing organization. Mona's asking about one, the charity situation, or another possibility for activities, going on an overseas mission trip to a developing country, or doing a Cambridge or Harvard summer session. Or we've got lots of options here for activities, taking a class locally at the high school during the summer, or working a part-time job in town. I recall hearing on your podcast previously that the activity you do doesn't matter. However, some of the above, quote unquote, sound more impressive, even though Mona personally feels that you can get equally impactful experience at all. So Nial, can you provide some details as to how college admissions officers at highly selective universities view these types of activities? My student, Mona says, is noticing many of her peers are doing the more expensive options, like starting their own charities that are supported by wealthy families and their wealthy friends, or attending these summer programs that cost thousands of dollars. So Mona's daughter's friends are doing these things, and we are just not sure, she says, if that equates to a greater acceptance chance at these selective colleges, or if it doesn't, and the colleges see that these are just a money game. Why are all these students continuing to do these things, Nial? That's a good question.
Great question. So really at the heart of the question is which extracurriculars are valued by selective colleges more than others, right? And there is no linear scale from least valuable to most valuable extracurricular activity. If there was, everyone would be clamoring to do those ones that are the most valuable, right? It would be an easy question to answer. But let's start a little bit big picture in answering the question, right? So we often talk about how selective colleges like to see two things in an extracurricular profile. One is breadth, which means well-roundedness of the student's involvement across the different areas, right? Across their high school career. That well-roundedness should appear. And the second is depth in a couple of areas. It doesn't have to be in everything, right? And what do I mean by depth? Depth can be achieved in a variety of different ways, and that's really dependent on the activity itself, right? So for instance, you could have a traditional leadership role in an activity that offers that. Or you could achieve depth through innovation, right? Or through consistent involvement across time, or through some situations in competitions, right? Some activities might have a competition or so. Or it could simply be by deepening or evolving your perspective and growing as your time with that organization continues. So that's the sort of big picture answer to what colleges are really looking at, right? But if we were to try to get into a little bit more nuance there, right? Particularly in the context of this question, how can this student make the right choice for them, right? That's when we start thinking and asking the question about what is the story, right? What is the narrative that the student is trying to communicate through their extracurricular activities? For instance, if this student wants to communicate that they are a self-starter, that they are really innovative and they like to take initiative and execute new ideas, then maybe starting a new charity is a good idea for them. If, to the contrary, they're trying to communicate that they have really learned the ins and outs of the work of this particular nonprofit that they really admire, and that they really want to make a substantial contribution in the area that that nonprofit is working in, maybe that's the better option in this situation, right? So it really is dependent on what the student is wishing to communicate about themselves as part of the overall narrative of the application. Remember, this is one of many places where a student can really show different facets about themselves. So this can be one of those puzzle pieces. So you can make really intentional choices. There is no right or wrong answer. This is one of those great examples where there isn't, right? But to your question about whether having attractive extracurriculars is a money game, no, it's not. No, I don't think so, right? Wealthy families, yes, they can afford more expensive programs, but those programs don't inherently carry more weight or carry weight as a function of their cost, right? And to share an example, many selective colleges in the country have these summer programs, right? And they're fairly popular. They can cost a lot of money. Oftentimes they're not that selective, right? The summer programs themselves. And I'm not saying that those programs don't carry any value, in that, you through participating in the program, you could become really familiar with the campus and the environment. You could talk much more specifically about your experience that summer and understanding the campus really well if you're applying to that place. Or you might be studying material that is honing your skills and knowledge in that particular area, and you're able to talk about it with much more erudition, right? So those things could be really valuable. But if you were to apply to that college that you did a summer program at, right, you don't inherently, as a function of doing that program, are going to be more competitive as an applicant for that particular university, right? So that hopefully is illustrative that it really isn't about the cost of an extracurricular. It's about how you make it your own and the story that you tell by having that show up as part of your activities list.
Really good advice. And I think it is such a common fallacy. If I do the summer program at Yale, I will be more likely to get into Yale. I think a lot of families think that way, understandably, but it's just not the case. Right.
And the Yale admissions office will be the first people to say that,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yeah. All right. The next question for you, Nial, comes in through Facebook from Virgil. And Virgil says, we know that having a strong transcript demonstrates a solid academic foundation and shows that a student can handle a rigorous college environment. Many less selective colleges are willing to accept 4s and 5s on AP exams for college credits. By the time my student graduates from high school, she will have taken a lot of APs. That could set her up for gaining admission to a selective school or racing ahead at a less selective school. The advantage of the less selective option is more easily managing a double major or maybe finishing college in 3 years and saving mom and dad a good amount of money. But what are the disadvantages to using AP tests to skip ahead?
What a great question. Yeah. So how about we first explore more fully how a strong AP score, or maybe even IB score, International Baccalaureate score, can help, right? So typically in 2 ways. One is it could get you a college level credit. And the other way is that it also could help you place out of introductory courses, right? So I wanted to make that distinction because it can show up in multiple ways.
Right.
But the reality is that a vast number of colleges, whether highly selective or less selective, will award students college level credit for AP scores. There are some, and really only a handful, that I believe 10 or so colleges, right, that don't do that and made an intentional choice to say, we used to, but now look, we're not counting AP. Even if you get a high AP score, we're not going to give you college level credit for that. But even most of these places are going to let you place out of certain courses dependent on a score, dependent on your experience. So that's important to know as we address that question, right? But even at these less selective colleges, there are often limits to how many credits that you can transfer in, or there's an expectation that a student has done a certain number of courses or a certain period of time at their home university. So, even if a student did, had 12 APs and did 4s and 5s in all of them, it doesn't automatically mean that they're going to have junior standing or sophomore standing. So it really is worth exploring it on a case-by-case basis to better understand, for this university, what is the score that would help me place out of what would it give me in terms of credit? They can sometimes be really transparent about that, so you can get a pretty good sense of that from their websites. But it's also important to remember that at these colleges, there's going to be major requirements, right? Sometimes there's core requirements beyond the major. Sometimes there's distribution requirements across several different fields. And yet another complicating factor in trying to figure out, what my path through these 4 years is going to be, while I can try to use these AP credits here and there, right? But as the question mentions, yes, you might gain some flexibility, which is awesome, and perhaps you might also, as a result, shave off a semester or a year and save some money. To really get to your question, what are the disadvantages? I set all that context, right? But some of the disadvantages of accelerating through college, maybe you would benefit from that introductory course that you're skipping over, right? So, college, high school, it depended on the course. It isn't always that you studied exactly the material that you'd be placing out of in the college level course, right? So that's one thing to keep in mind. Second, you might feel a little bit more of that pressure on meeting those requirements, whether it be for your major, whether it be for the college specific requirements, and you might have to make some sacrifices, right? So maybe you won't study abroad, right? Maybe you don't double major, you have a single major, right? Things like that would be a disadvantage, just less flexibility there. And potentially you might also be choosing that you're not graduating with your class, right? And is that a priority for you? Maybe, maybe not. Will that be a priority for you down the line, right? Some of these places are really designed to be a 4-year experience, and getting to know your peers in the social and intellectual context can be a really important part of that experience. So don't want to understate that either. So those are some of the disadvantages that come to mind.
Perfect. And I think that's probably all we have a chance for. We have maybe like in 30 seconds, Nial, our rising seniors, what should they be doing right now? It's mid-August. What should they do? What should be top priority?
If school hasn't started yet, try to work on your essays, right? You're going to be pulled in 100 different directions when school starts, with activities and school and exams and all that. Not exams yet, hopefully, but with all the bunch of stuff that you're doing when school starts up. And it can be hard to make the space to work on your writing, particularly your main college essay, assuming you're working on the Common Application. Try to do as much of that drafting of that before school starts.
I think that is great advice. Thank you so much for that and for all your advice today, Nial. It's been great having you.
Yeah, it's been fun.
And thank you, listeners, for joining. If you enjoyed this episode, please do leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. We definitely appreciate the feedback, and it does help more families to find us. So thanks in advance for that. And I hope you join us next week, where we're going to be talking about Naviance, which is the tool that some of your high schools may be using to manage the college application process and beyond. For college freshmen heading off to school in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be covering the do's and don'ts of dorm move-in day, which should be fun. And we're going to talk about tuition refund policies, which is a very important process to understand before sending your child off to school. So please do tune in next week. And we will be here every Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern and 1 p.m. Pacific. Bye-bye.
See you.